Fablehaven, Chapter 10, Part 2. Kendra shoved past Seth and jerked the window shut in time to impede the entrance of a coldly beautiful woman swathed in writhing black garments. The apparition's dark hair undulated the vapor in the trees. Her pallid face was slightly translucent. Gazing into those empty, searing eyes froze Kendra where she stood. Babbling whispers filled her mind. Her mouth felt dry. She could not swallow. Seth yanked the curtain shut and tugged Kendra toward the bed. Whatever trance had momentarily gorgonized her dissolved. Disoriented, she ran alongside Seth to the bed, sensing something in pursuit. When they leaped onto the mattress, a brilliant light flared behind them, accompanied by a crisp stutter like firecrackers. Kendra twisted to get a look. The maroon goblin stood near the bed, coddling its bold pony shoulder. The scowling creature stood about as tall as Dell. Hesitantly, it reached a knobby hand toward her, and another bright flash sent it staggering away. The circle of salt. At first, she had not grasped why Seth was dragging her to the bed. At least one of them was thinking. Glancing down, Kendra saw that the 2-inch dune of salt surrounding the bed indeed marked the line the goblin could not cross. A 12-foot centipede with 3 sets of wings and 3 pairs of taloned feet corkscrewed around the room in a complex aerial display. A brutish monster with a pronounced underbite and plates down its spine hurled a wardrobe across the room. The wolves had shed their disguises as well. The maroon goblin cavorted around the room in a feral tantrum, tearing down bookshelves, upsetting toy chests, and snapping the horn off the rocking horse. It picked up Goldilocks' cage and flung it against the wall. The slender bars crumpled and the door sprang open. The terrified chicken took an ungainly flight in a flurry of golden feathers. Goldilocks was coming toward the bed. The winged centipede struck at the flustered hen, but missed. The maroon demon made an acrobat leap and caught the chicken by both legs. Goldilocks clucked and squirmed in mortal panic. Seth jumped off the bed. Crouching, he scooped up 2 handfuls from the circle of salt and charged the wiry goblin. Now holding the chicken in one hand, the sneering goblin rushed to meet him. An instant before the outstretched hand of the demon reached him, Seth flung a handful of salt. Releasing Goldilocks, the demon reeled back, scorched by a blinding blaze. The chicken made straight for the bed, and Seth tossed his other handful of salt in a wide arc to cover their retreat, scalding the flying centipede in the process. The bulky creature with the underbite tried to beat Seth to the bed, arriving too late. It received a violent shock as it collided with the invisible salt barrier. Back on the bed, Seth clung to Goldilocks, arms quivering convulsively. The maroon demon growled. His face and chest were charred from the salt. Tendrils of smoke curled up from the burns. Turning, the demon pulled a book from the shelf and tore it in half. The door flew open, and Dell leveled a shotgun at the monster with the underbite. "You kids stay put no matter what," he called. All 3 monsters converged on the doorway. Dell retreated down the stairs, gun silent. The winged centipede spiraled out the door above the other scrambling creatures. They heard a shotgun blast down in the hall. "Shut the door and stay put," Dell hollered. Kendra ran and slammed the door, then sprinted back to her bed. Seth held Goldilocks, tears streaming down his cheeks. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he whimpered. "It'll be okay." From downstairs came repeated gunshots, growls, roars, shrieks, glass shattering, wood splintering. Outside, a cacophonous uproar resumed louder than ever. Pagan drums, urethral choirs, tribal chanting, wailing, lamentations, guttural snarls, unnatural howls, and piercing screams united in relentless disharmony. Kendra, Seth, and Goldilocks sat on the bed, waiting dawn. Kendra had to constantly fight images of the woman with the swirling black garments. She could not get the apparition out of her mind. When she had looked into those soulless eyes, even though the lady was outside, Kendra had felt certain there would be no escape. Late in the night, the furor had begun to relent, replaced by more unnerving sounds. Babies began to cry beyond the window again, calling for Mama. When that failed to elicit a response, the voices of young children pleaded for help. Kendra, please hurry, they're coming. Seth, open up, help us. Seth, don't leave us out here. After the cries went ignored for a while, snarls and screams would stimulate the demise of the young supplicants. Then a new batch of solicitors began begging for admittance. Perhaps the most disconcerting was when Grandpa was inviting them down to breakfast. We made it. Kids, the sun is rising. Come on, Lena cooked hotcakes. How do we know you're our grandpa? Kendra asked, a little more suspicious. Because I love you. Hurry, the food's getting cold. I don't think the sun's up yet, Seth replied. It's just a little cloudy this morning. Go away, Kendra said. Just let me in. I want to kiss you. Good morning. Our grandpa never kisses us, you sicko, Seth yelled. Get out of our house. The exchange was followed by vicious banging on the door for a solid 5 minutes. The hinges shook, but the door held. The night wore on. Kendra leaned against the headboard and Seth dozed at her side. Despite the noise, her eyelids began to feel heavy. Suddenly she jerked awake. Gray light was seeping through the curtains. Goldilocks wandered the floor, pecking at kernels from her spilled bucket of feed. When the curtains were masking unmistakable sunlight, Kendra nudged Seth. He looked around, blinking, then crept to the window and peeked out. The sun is officially up, he announced. We made it. I'm scared to go downstairs, whispered Kendra. Everybody's fine, Seth said nonchalantly. Then why haven't they come to get us? Seth had no response. Kendra had gone easy on him during the night. The consequences for opening the window were brutal enough without placing blame and starting arguments. And Seth had really acted remorseful, but now he was reverting to his idiot self. Kendra glared at him. You realize you might have killed them all. His face fell and he turned away, shoulders shaking with sobs. He buried his face in his hands. They're probably fine, he squeaked. Dell had a gun and everything. They know how to handle themselves. Kendra felt bad, seeing that Seth clearly was worried too. She went to him and tried to give him a hug. He shoved her away. Leave me alone. Seth, whatever happened isn't your fault. Of course it's my fault. His nose was getting congested. I mean, they tricked us. I sort of wanted to open the window too when I saw those wolves charging, in case it wasn't fake. I knew it might be a trick, he sobbed. But that baby looks so real. I thought they might have kidnapped him and used him as bait. I thought I could save him. You were trying to do the right thing. She attempted to hug him once more, but he pushed her away again. Don't, he snapped. I didn't mean to blame you, said Kendra. You were acting like you didn't even care. Of course I care. You don't think I'm terrified to go down there and find out what I did. You didn't do it. They tricked you. I would have opened the window if you hadn't. If I would have stayed in bed, none of this would have happened, Seth lamented. Maybe they're fine. Right. Then they let a monster come in the house and up our door pretending to be Grandpa. Maybe they had to hide down in the basement or something? Seth was no longer crying. He picked up a doll and used her dress to wipe his nose. I hope so. Just in case something bad did happen, you can't blame yourself. All you did was open a window. If those monsters did something bad, it's their fault. Partly. Grandpa and Lena and Dell all know that living here is risky. I'm sure they're fine, but if they aren't, you mustn't blame yourself. Whatever. I'm serious. I like it better when you're funny. You know I liked, Kendra said. What? When you saved Goldilocks. He laughed, snorting a little through his stuffy nose. Did you see how bad the salt burned that guy? He retrieved the doll and wiped his nose again on the dress. It was really brave. I'm just glad it worked out. It was quick thinking. Seth glanced at the door and then back at Kendra. We should probably go check out the damage. If you say so.